if I told you 10,000 enslaved people in Alabama vanished in a single night? 1863, middle of the Civil War. Plantations went to bed full. By sunrise, ghost towns. This wasn't chaos. It was the most organized escape in American history. Months of secret planning. Hidden trails only the enslaved knew. Underground routes spanning 3 counties. They moved like an army without making a sound, leaving tools out, fires burning, beds still warm. It looked like they evaporated into the night. The masters called soldiers, bloodhounds, bounty hunters. They found nothing. Because you can't catch people who know the land better than you ever will. Historians call it the night slavery broke itself. They didn't wait for Lincoln. They freed themselves, and most were never caught. If they won't teach it, we will. Hit follow.
A narrative of the life and adventures of Venture, a native of Africa, but resident above 60 years in the United States of America, related by himself.
At 6 years old, he was taken to AYIBOBO, on the Gold Coast, modern-day Ghana, to be sold into slavery.
Chapter 1, containing an account of his life from his birth to the time of his leaving his native country.
I was born at Dukonda in Guinea, about the year 1729. My father's name was Song Furo, prince of the tribe of Dukondaro. My father had 3 wives. Polygamy was not uncommon in that country, especially among the rich. As every man was allowed to keep as many wives as he could maintain, I descended from a very large, tall, and stout race of beings, much larger than the generality of people in other parts of the globe, being commonly considerably above 6 feet in height, and in every way, well proportioned.
Chapter 2, containing an account of his life from the time of his leaving Africa to that of his becoming free.
After all the business was ended on the coast of Africa, the ship sailed from thence to Barbados. After an ordinary passage, except great mortality from smallpox, which broke out on board, we arrived at the island of Barbados.
But when we reached it, there were found out of the 260 that sailed from Africa, not more than 200 alive. These were all sold, except for myself and 3 more, to the planters there.
Venture earned enough to buy his freedom in 1765.
I am now 69 years old, though once straight and tall, measuring without shoes, 6 feet 1 inch and in half, and every way well proportioned. I am now bowed down with age and hardship.
Venture Smith died on September 19, 1805, in Haddam, Connecticut, at the age of 76. These are his descendants.
Good afternoon. This is a beautiful fall day, and the rain came yesterday, so we don't have to worry about it. Welcome to the 27th Annual Venture Smith Day, a Connecticut Freedom Trail celebration.
The first time I came and the grave had been exhumed and was just there, cleaned up the headstone. I put my hand on the headstone and I fell to my knees and cried uncontrollably. I had never felt anything like that before. Our family is one of the original native African American families in Connecticut. And I want to continue that. I want our family to embrace that history. I want our young family members to embrace that history and continue to keep alive the memory of Venture Smith.
She poisoned an entire family on their wedding day. Over 17 people were unalived. This is the cook slave who poisoned her entire family after being brutally mistreated. This happened in the heart of Mississippi in 1849 on the Mississippi River. And this Riverdale mansion held 17 members of Warren County's most prominent families, and they succumbed to a slow and agonizing death. This is Black AF history, the unwhitewashed story of America. I highly recommend it. These are the stories they don't tell you in school. Their faces contorted in expressions that doctors could never explain. They were found with their eyes still open, liquid oozing from their mouth from the herbs that the slave had picked and meticulously added to the dishes that she prepared for the wedding day. It was 1848. The opulence of the main house, and primarily for the existence of its table, held the quality of the harvest. Colonel James Riverside had inherited the property, and he had 340 slaves underneath him. In no way did he prepare for Celia to take his life. Now, Celia had arrived at the plantation as a child in 1829, and she was mistreated brutally. But it hit the fan when her daughter started getting mistreated as well. She decided to come up with a plan of mixing different herbs for each person. One in particular caused hallucinations, so they could see everything they had done right before they passed.
Honor and respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. Divine all blessed greetings and salutations. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Voodoo Hoodoo 101. Powered, produced, promoted, sponsored, and supported by NOIVD, New Orleans International Voodoo Day. Become a part of something extraordinary. New Orleans International Voodoo Day is not just an event, it is a movement that celebrates culture, fosters education, and connects people from around the globe. By sponsoring this event, you're supporting a tax-deductible cause that preserves heritage, uplifts art and education, and fosters healing within the community and beyond. And we continue to invite you to join us at www.vodouday.org, www.voodooday.org for more information and coming updates. And we're certainly grateful for your continued love, support, and participation on this live platform, weeknights at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Greetings and salutations, S. Marie. Thank you so much for your continued support and participation. Greetings, Nina Lloyd. Thank you so much for your continued support and participation. Ray Alexander, we certainly appreciate your continued love, support, and participation. And Daniel Neal, a member of our community, we certainly appreciate you. And we will be unmuting and opening the mics for Elder Reggie, Green Soap, Shrine of the White Cloth, and the beloved Queen Mother, Sister Toni Val Martinez. Momentarily, I want to just quickly introduce a new document, same subject, different document. The effects of the Nat Turner slave revolt on the health and welfare of 19th century slaves in southeastern Virginia, as well as ultimately throughout the South, by Jeffrey Clifford Auerbach, dated August 2014. The Nat Turner slave revolt also keeps in concert with our ongoing storyline of revolt, revolution, uprising, often fueled, motivated, empowered, and encouraged by hoodoo, voodoo, obia, and the like. But certainly are focusing now a little bit closer to home. We talked about the uprising in New York City, and now we're going to go a little bit more into the Nat Turner revolt and its effects subsequently on the health and wellness of the slave population following. The Nat Turner Slave Revolt stands as a major turning point in the history of American slavery and represents a fundamental shift in the master-slave relationship. This event shattered the previous paternalistic view and caused a fundamental reorganization of slave life. Indeed, in this reorganization was a shift in the subsistence practice, moving away from more nutritious food grown by the slaves themselves to poor quality rations provided by the masters. This change in subsistence practices dealt a serious blow to the nutritional health of those living in the area surrounding the revolt, the Nat Turner slave revolt. By examining stature recorded in the county registers of free Negroes and mulattoes, it is possible to qualify the effects of this loss of nutrition and quantitatively compare those born and raised before the revolt to those who were born and raised in the post Nat Turner world. Records were collected from 5 southeastern Virginia counties and are divided into pre and post Nat Turner groups. These groups were statistically analyzed using ANOVA, ANOVA means testing. The males born after the revolt show a strongly statistically significant drop in stature, averaging 65.8 inches or 167 centimeters, or 1.68 inches, 4.3 centimeters shorter than their pre Nat Turner counterparts, who stood at 7.4 inches or 171 centimeters. Females showed no drop in stature and remained consistent at 63 inches or 160 centimeters. Now, I'm not understanding these inches and this time period, so maybe we can get a clearer understanding. This may be due to the uh, canalization, as other studies also found this average stature under similar circumstances. It is also possible that this is due to cultural practices and biases that allowed better nutrition and therefore increased catch-up growth for males. While the results are mixed, they are not surprising based on what is known from previous research, which has found strong evidence of female resistance to nutritional change. While other studies have not found results that match this study, it is important to recognize that other studies have not asked that same question. Those studies where data disagree with one were indicated to ask significantly different questions and use different sample sets. This study helps to shed light on one of the great events in slave history through the lives of those who felt it on the ground and whose lives were most affected. In the very early morning hours of August 22nd, 1831, a group of 8 slaves led by Nat Turner, born in 1800, died in 1831, initially armed with little more than farming implements, began a brief insurrection that shook the county and have enduring and far-reaching consequences. The revolt itself was considered short-lived, lasting little more than a day, involving no more than 60 to 80 active rebels, and posing no threat to anyone outside of Southampton County, Virginia. And despite the limited nature of this uprising, it had wider ranging implications that struck a chord of fear that larger, earlier rebellions had failed to do. In a Federal Writers Project interview, former slave Fannie Berry of Petersburg, Virginia, recalled the panic after the Nat Turner Revolt as one of her first memories, saying, "Back before the 60s, I can remember my mistress, Miss Sarah Ann, coming to the window and hollering, "The niggas is a rising. The niggas is a rising. The niggas is killing all the white folk, killing all the babies in the cradle." It must have been Nat Turner's insurrection. And again, this is documented in Works Progress Administration 1936, page 1. Turner, guided by heavenly visions and divine voices, believed that it was his destiny to bring freedom through revolt. He believed that this act of defiance would gain momentum and lead to a full-scale revolution. Where it did gain momentum, it lacks of focus and organization, doomed it almost from the offset. The major consequences of the revolt were not to inspire other revolutionaries and bring freedom as Turner had hoped, but rather it may have had the effect of making slaves' lives more difficult. There is a long history of slave revolts in this country from our earliest colonial days. Some of the larger revolts, such as the 1811 revolt in New Orleans, had nearly 500 participants, some of whom were free. This is important because while there were slave revolts both before and after Nat Turner's revolt, none of the previous revolts had the same level of impact, and the later revolts, John Brown's included, had effects that would be short-lived due to the onset of the Civil War and the even greater changes that ensued. The consequences of Turner's revolt and the abject fear that it inspired in the white populations was something that had not been seen previously. The obvious effects of a slave rebellion are crackdowns on slaves, such as the widespread violent reprisals that led to hundreds of deaths of both slaves and free people of color following the Nat Turner revolt. But there may be some less obvious results. The Nat Turner revolt may have led to dramatic long-term effects on the health of slaves. This was because the small freedoms that the slaves had previously enjoyed were taken away. Earlier writings refer often offhandedly to slaves being allowed to walk away about in town freely and gather at will. But as Cromwell discusses, most states passed laws preventing slave gatherings and even enacted new strong laws against free people of color. These strict new laws had consequences many aspects of slave life, especially their ability to carry out subsistence activities and independent of the master. These consequences included loss of the ability to carry guns for hunting and keep tools for farming, and even more importantly, the banning of slaves from carrying on commerce and earning their own money. And this study will explore the effects of this change, especially the loss of the ability to carry out subsistence practices, independent of their masters. These restrictions had the potential to make lives for slaves even more difficult by forcing slaves to rely almost entirely on the meager rations provided to them. And we know that post-Civil War, there were crackdowns here locally in terms of our ability to gather, drum, and certainly do any ritualized activities. And it was at that time that these activities were confined primarily to Congo Square. But let it not be mistaken, we were still not free of eyes and ears and nosy folks. You know, the overseers and the masters and the white folk would often gather on their horses with their children and come and watch the activities of Congo Square. Again, often creating sort of the entertainment element to what we see demonstrated in Congo Square. Certainly the dance, the drumming, the performance, the storytelling, but more of the public demonstration. similar to some of the responsibility that some authors have given to Marie Laveau for bringing an element of entertainment and opening up supposedly our practices and our traditions to white folks, eventually creating gatherings of 10,000, 12,000 or more on the bayou for St. John's Eve. So please, as I unmute my beloved co-host, Brother Joshua Nylan Tanner, Queen Mother Sister Toni Val Martinez, and Elder Reggie, Green Soap, Shrine of the White Cloth, please do come on in and share your opinions and your comments again about these crackdowns, some of which continue, up until this day in terms of the demonization of our practices and our traditions, and them being solely rooted in the fear of uprising and revolution.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Sister Toni here. Divine Prince, Elder Reggie, Brother Joshua, listening audience. As you was reading that, and I was thinking about slave owners, plantation owners, they lived in constant fear, whether real or in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, we did revolt a lot. It wasn't happy singing and tap dancing on Uncle Remus on a plantation. And I couldn't sleep at night with that amount of paranoia. If they come to kill us all, somebody always spreading rumors. And because people did travel so much, they heard the stuff way after and it made it seem like it's happening right now. The number of slave patrols that must have went up and down the roads to make sure that slaves weren't up to anything had to be kind of like today with ICE, with them hiring ICE. To go out there and capture them. They know where they are. They know they're working on a plan. They know where the slaves are. They know where the slaves be at. They just got to catch them doing something off of that area, and they got paid for it.
And I'm sure Brother Joshua can speak to the skills that we would have acquired from the Aboriginal people in terms of our ability to navigate the terrain. Certainly, St. Milo and the Maroons were documented to come and go from their slave jobs, slave positions, and disappear into the swamps, sometimes for days at a time, just to return and pick up their tools and go back to their jobs. But as Elder Reggie has demonstrated at the slave unveiling as well as in other podcasts, our movement, free or enslaved, was being greatly curtailed post-Civil War, including our ability to gather and operate freely in our spiritual practice.
Yes. And also, like you said, the little freedoms that were given, like having your own little garden outside of your slave hut with your own little hoes and tools and picks. They took all of that from them, stopped them from doing that as a way of, well, that slave did something, so I'm going to punish everybody. It's going to get punished. And that had to greatly affect their dietary needs, because then after they took that from them, they was only to sustain on what they could gather and hunt by themselves, trap, not hunt with guns, trap and fish. And they weren't allowed to do that because most of those things were not on the plantation that they couldn't leave off of. And they took a big risk in doing that. What say you, Elder Reggie?
Yes, blessing, Sister Toni, Divine Prince, Brother Joshua. It's a good topic tonight. as Divine Prince was reading, and I enjoyed the readings real well, but something was triggered in my head because I was looking for what I heard as growing up as a child, that Nat Turner was inspired by scripture. So I just done a little Google search, and I just want to read just a paragraph. It says, Slave Revolution Bible verses reference in the Confession of Nat Turner, 1831. Sources from the time of the revolt often referred to Nat Turner as a preacher and suggested that Turner thought of himself as a man of God, perhaps even as a prophet chosen by God to fulfill a special mission. The words Thomas R. Gray attributed to Turner in his pamphlet, The Confession of Nat Turner, including reference to various passages from the Old and New Testament. And the reason I'm going in this direction, as Divine Prince was reading, it's the sustenance of food. It actually changed the diet of the slaves in that area. They start feeding them poorly. They didn't want healthy men and women that they felt may rise up against them. But I'm wondering, did they also limit them in the Bible and the teachings of the word as they seen it at that time? Because if this was the thing that led Nat Turner to revolt, I wonder, did they pull back on that? That I don't know, but I'm just raising a question.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. I never thought
Well,
about that.
you can figure they stopped the slaves from gathering, which is when they would get together to do quote unquote church. But you also have to realize that, you know, not all the slaves could read. And if you go in a little further on Nat Turner, I believe he had visions also, similar to Harriet Tubman.
And my thing with that story, I've been doing some research, some continuous research on that story about Nat Turner. I'm starting to see Nat Turner as a story of like how anybody that's understanding have seen the Bible or read anything from the Bible, the story of Moses. It's like an insurrection of a people revolting against his people and moving from one place to another. Like, and as you was reading the I know it was subsequent, like you said, in terms of information travel during that time. Something traveled the way it's traveling for us through Instagram. So it's like people got word of mouth. It traveled down the street, or they just seen it happening and occurring, and people just started reacting to it. And based on the information they gathered, they moved in the direction that they had to. And it's a spiritual. I think that was a spiritual uprising too, not just a revolutionary uprising, like Brother Reggie was saying, because it had to be. I mean, I know for a fact that the Black church was governed by the Catholic Church in terms of its words and its message and its deliverance and how and monitored in that way too. So could have been something that there was like, okay, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense, or there was approaching. I don't know. Who knows?
Right, Brother Josh. And that's the
Seeking more information.
Because as Divine Prince was reading, the guy who done the research, he came up that they start changing their diet, start giving them real horrible food. So if they took that action, it just may be other actions that the slave masters and the planters had taken against the people to try to stop them from revolting again in the future.
You got to think about.
Yeah.
And you also got to think about the native people here, the indigenous people here. They're from the land, so they know the land, and they know the quality of what they're supposed to eat, or what's valued worthy of them to consume. So they're like, I ain't got to do this. I can go over here and do that.
Yeah, but
you're not gonna feed me. You're not gonna feed me. You're gonna feed me subpar food. I can feed myself.
And I think now that's why so many Southern foods that people today turn their nose up at eating, like chitlins and poke salad and pepper grass and all of that
Mm-hmm.
came out of that time where they ate what was edible, and the green vegetables gave them, strength anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They know what was edible,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that the master wasn't eating of trying to feed them, even when they didn't have their own gardens. They knew how to do what we call foraging throughout, and getting the greens and the little berries and stuff that they could get, that even though, those things grew close to the edges of the property lines,
Yeah.
Sister
like
Toni,
berries and
yes, Sister Toni,
uh-huh.
I agree with that. But from the article Divine Prince read, there was measurables before the Nat Turner revolt and after. So as Divine Prince reading, say if a person was 5.7 inches, which is 5 feet 4 inches tall. And then when they done it after, like 10 years after the revolt, if people was not even getting to 5'2" or coming in at 5 feet even, that was a tangible result of changing of the people diet.
Yes, it was.
That becomes very important, because it borderlines on eugenics, and it borderlines on a few other things, how you can
Yeah.
actually start affecting people's health. I believe here in 2025, a lot of us have poor health, poor diets, because the stuff that we are getting from the local and corner grocery stores, they even call them food deserts. There's certain walking distance you can only get beer, soda, and chips. You're not getting fresh fruit. You're not getting fresh meat or anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Like
a
in the lower
person's
ninth
diet
ward.
mm-hmm.
The lower ninth ward is one of the big food deserts. And I would also say Gentilly area around Delgado.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Dillard's. I'm sorry, around Dillard's. I mean, you go to Family Dollar, but and Dollar Tree, but they don't have nothing but processed foods and junk.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I see in the night ward they're starting to do a bus that goes down there where people can buy fresh produce and vegetables. So they
Mm-hmm.
was trying to bring that in at Andrew Pete Sanchez twice a week, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that people can get, cabbage and greens and tomatoes and lettuce and potatoes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's one of the things when you know that you really in an all black neighborhood, they don't have a lot of places to get good food at.
But Sister Tony, with that being said, then that could contribute to high blood pressure, high blood sugar or low blood sugar,
Heart
or
disease.
a plethora of other medical health issues.
Oh yeah,
Heart disease.
totally.
Mm.
Totally. But getting off the subject a little bit, from last night,
Mm-hmm.
Elder Reggie asked about a particular movie that's coming out called The Conjuring. And
Mm-hmm.
this one is The Conjuring, The Last Rites. There are a lot of those Conjuring movies out over the years. This one is supposed to stem also from like the first one with the husband and wife who delved into the supernatural. And it was reports that people seeing the Conjuring movies claim that they was possessed also in the audience. The movie goers claim they got possessed by something also. This also happened during the showing of The Exorcist, which was really, I think, one of the first movies that really scared people to that level in cinematic history. I don't believe that they were getting conjured through the movie screen. They were getting possessed through the movie screen. I just believed in the power of suggestion
Yeah.
that was affecting them, because people actually, they had to have ambulances waiting outside, nurses in the atriums, and people was passing out and running out screaming. I mean, they actually did that to the point where a lot of movie theaters would not show it. But I think it was just merely the power of suggestion that got them that way.
Good point, Sister Toni. I would just, when I raised the question last night, I was just a little bit baffled by it, but I didn't want to overshoot and say, oh, no, that couldn't happen. But it, like you said, since you brought up the power of suggested belief, there's a possibility it can happen.
Yeah, power of suggestion make them flip out, because they definitely did. I really myself have not watched a movie with Conjuring in it that the title was The Conjuring, Conjuring Part 3, any kind of Conjuring, and I don't plan on watching this other one coming out either. Not that I'm afraid of the power of suggestion. It's just that I don't want to entertain that. I don't want that in my thought process. We have enough real evil going on for me to think about than to have me having bad thoughts and paranoia. So I love scary movies. I just pick which ones I will watch. I don't like slasher films, gory blood films, and I don't watch films that like The Conjuring with the YT people. And I've watched the Serpent in the Rainbow, the Skeleton Key, all those type shows like that. But I just don't. My spirit tell me stay away from them conjurings, and that's what I do. So our time is really coming to an end, and I would like Elder Reggie to close us out.
Thank you, Sister Toni. Thanks, Divine Prince, for hosting a great show, and Brother Joshua, always your presence. Before I do the closeout, I'd like to read our next promo. Our next ritual prayer and application ceremony on the new moon, which is going to be Sunday, September the 21st. We're going to, and also it's a combination of a solar eclipse. We're going to do another ceremony at 6:30 p.m. and that address is 710 Cluid. Some know it in the New Orleans area as the Cluid Gardens. It's going to be spiritual warfare and gathering. So those in the vicinity, or if you planning on coming to New Orleans at that time, please come out. We'll be there. Some of our practitioners will be there, and we'll do a collective work and responsibility. With that, I say, lest we forget, the spiritual medicine of voodoo brings healing and relief from the shackles of slavery that binds the master and the slave to the same chain of social division. As we continue to stay bound, we continue to talk about slavery, we continue to talk about revolution and revolt, and we continue to talk about the planter class and the masters of that time. We cannot let this history be swept under the rug. With that, I say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Good night, everyone. We love you all.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Odabo.
You sir. And if you hear something going to the right, going to the knees, baby, shake it to the max. DJ, please turn up the bass to the max. Please just you ready, let me shake it to the max.
I can't tell you how dangerous that is. And what you're opening yourself up to. Losing everything.
So have you ever seen or experienced the effects of dark magic?
Oh yeah, when they broke into my house. While I'm gone, he pushes the air conditioning in. He went to the altars. That was a mistake. I cannot protect him. He violated my shrine. I can't protect him. I knew exactly who the person was. I immediately called every elder that I knew in town. This isn't about retribution. This isn't about my desire to want to do some kind of dark magic. You've got to get him to bring that back. 7 days later, he's dead.
At the beginning of this, maybe I was more skeptical. As the days have gone on, I'm not sure what I think anymore.
I felt that maybe it wouldn't affect me if I personally didn't believe in it.
So, knowing what you know now, would you still get cursed?
I'm seeking out a curse, a hex to put on myself.
A curse could end your life. You're literally begging the devil to knock on your door just to prove to you that God's real.
He could curse you with stupidity, but we think you got that down.
Despite the warnings, I'm investigating the real-world effects of dark magic.
Looks like you have a lot of love and a lot of opportunity. You are going to cause damage to that.
How do you feel after doing this?
Evil.
That must be quite seductive.
That's the power you're calling on. The devil, right? Quite seductive.
I'm going to enter into a pact with Satan.
Señor Satán, Lucifer, presentamos a este hermano. Con tu fuego purifica.
Wyong is pretty much the epicenter of all black magic. People are very scared to even talk about it.
Y'all better not call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about this man is dead. I don't want to hear that.
I have this physical feeling that something bad is coming. What have I done?
You're going to have to find faith in this in order to undo it.